Is Huntsman a backdoor into Wharton? Find out as we answer questions about Huntsman and more in this video of Dual Degrees at Penn. So what's up guys, I'm Mo the Fro back with another video. I'm a senior at Penn in the M&T program and I do college advising for a number of students and I've helped students get into dual degrees across Penn, and I've helped students get into pure Wharton or just top colleges in general. If you're interested in advising with me, you can email me at mustafadoesstuff@gmail.com, or if you have questions about the content of this video. And we're here to talk about the Huntsman program at Penn. So we're going to go through what is the Huntsman program, what opportunities do their students have, what's the vibe of the program, and whether it's a backdoor into Wharton, which I actually have some opinions on. So it's a dual degree program. You graduate with a degree in economics, like business from Wharton basically, and international studies, which is, like literally it's a made up major by the program. I don't mean to say that it's like a made up major, like fake one, but it's specific to Huntsman students, and it's really like a focus on international business in the courses and in the coursework. And you graduate with 2 degrees for the price of one. So you basically get like literally like 2 degrees on your transcript, and you graduate like with 2 separate bachelor's degrees, which is an interesting feature of Penn. A couple other schools have features like this. Stanford has one that you can do. MET at Berkeley has one. I mean, there's a number of programs you can get 2 degrees. USC has actually a triple degree in language, or not in language, but you do 3 separate colleges. I believe one in China, and I forget the second one. But you know, there are a number of programs that offer this, but it's Penn's, and Penn, dual degrees is really one of the hallmarks of Penn with regard to the top colleges. It's one of the few that offers such programs like this, and it's really interesting. So, with that being said, what do you actually study? What do you actually do? And what is Huntsman? So, Huntsman is a language-focused program and an international business-focused program. So, the idea of the program is that you go to Huntsman, you start out fairly intermediate in your language, but you study it for 4 semesters, and then you do a study abroad for a semester, and then you come out of it great at your language and you're ready to tackle international business situations. Think I want to, work in another country in America, or I want to work in firms in another country, in their divisions there. I want to be a liaison between 2 countries, or a number of things really you could consider actually, and I'll get into that in a second. A lot of interesting types of applications. So, like I said, the hallmark of Huntsman is this language focus. So they really want you to take a target language and be good at it. They really want you to work on international things, not just, I want to get into business, but I really want to do international business in some way. This is what Huntsman likes to see. The other hallmark is their study abroad for a semester. It's actually quite nice, I would say. You get to study abroad in a country of your choice practically for a semester. You can study abroad as a general Penn student, but Huntsman, it's required in Huntsman. Now, with that being said, Huntsman is limited. There are 11 target languages, which I will put up on the screen now. Fairly common languages, but there are a lot of languages not represented here, and I've actually had a student said I want to do, I was interested in this target language, but they don't have it. So, like, it was like Thai. Now, that being said, what does Huntsman offer in particular aside from this language tilt? So it offers you the ability to take these international business focused classes in the college and in Wharton. Wharton has some of the best business classes. I mean, I think in my opinion, the best business classes that you can get in undergrad, especially with international business. I feel Wharton has a super high proportion of international students. I actually believe the highest proportion of any top college. So you get this kind of exposure to a lot of nice business classes, but also a lot of students, a lot of culture around you, and that's something I actually wrote about in my Penn application about wanting to like converse with international students and like Japanese students and stuff like that. I studied Japanese back in high school and even and now. But that being said, the big thing is you get to take these classes with a business focus. For example, I took a class on like international startups and like startup ecosystems, and I got to like learn about different countries and what you can do there. I took international healthcare like management, or comparative healthcare systems, technically speaking, where I learned about different healthcare systems across countries. I'm not even a Huntsman student. I'm an MT student, management technology, but I have still taken these classes. And Penn also has great language programs. Japanese program at Penn in particular, if you're interested, one of the strongest in the country, the AP writer, one of them comes from Penn. She's the head of the program here, and I made a typo when I emailed her in Japanese, and I was embarrassed beyond what I can say. Anyway, thankfully she didn't point it out, but I think she was just being nice. Anyway, Penn has some great language programs, and people generally like the language classes here. And that's, kind of some of the benefits you get out of coming to Penn. You get really, really great coursework. Honestly, excellent coursework. And Wharton has obviously the great business side, but I think the language side being is a little bit lesser known. Now, there are some languages that maybe are not as strong. I cannot speak. I've not taken I've actually not taken any language courses at Penn. But I hear about the strength of the language courses, and I speak with a bunch of students about them and get their vibe check on them. And the language courses at Penn tend to be strong. Or I read about Japanese in my case. I've actually read about Korean too. So anyway, the point being, there are a lot of great language courses at Penn. Now, say you want to do a target language or a second language that's not a target language, you're allowed to do that. Say you want to pick up a second target language, you're also allowed to do that in Huntsman, although I haven't met anyone that's done it. But it's possible. If you're really just a language freak, want to go polyglot straight out, you definitely can. It's actually only 4 semesters. And the students that come out of Huntsman, I wouldn't say they're fluent most of the time. Depends on the student. I would say I hear them speak and I'm just like, Depends though. Depends on the student. 4 semesters of language is not that much, especially if you're only starting intermediate. It's good, but certain languages, in particular, you might consider Mandarin or Japanese, which are Category 5 languages, the most difficult, or Arabic, which is also Category 5. These languages are very difficult to learn for English speakers. Thousands of hours need to go into it. 4 college classes isn't going to help you. A semester study abroad it's going to help you, but it's not going to get you to fluency or native level. Now, there are some Huntsman students that just go like crazy and are super fluent in their languages, and that happens with any college and any language courses. But just be aware, it's not a promise. It's not a promise to be fluent in your language when you graduate, but rather it's as much as you put into it. And a lot of Huntsman students, which now that we're getting into the career side and kind of how Huntsman students lean and how Huntsman students act and what's the vibe check, a lot of Huntsman students take Huntsman and then pivot towards general business. Something I forgot to address before I address that is that you can also switch languages. So they say that you pick your target language going in. People switch languages all the time. People say, wait a minute, this language is useless now that I've been here for a little bit. People switch languages. It's allowed. So you're not stuck into your language if you don't like it. I had a friend switch to French, although I don't know why you'd switch to French. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, so I think that once we get into like more of the career focus and how Huntsman students tend to like lean, if you will, Huntsman students are 100% on the Wharton side, generally speaking. You might consider some other dual degrees where it's a little bit more in the middle at Penn. Huntsman students tend to flock towards the Wharton side. And really, I would consider it more a business program. Even the international like classes you take in the college, while there are some general college requirements you need to get through, honestly, it's not that different than a Wharton degree. And the reason is a lot of Wharton students take, gen eds and stuff. It's only 40 CUs. Wharton requires 37 to graduate. Other dual degrees like M&T, like the Management and Technology program, require 46. So does Viper, 46 to graduate. I'm pretty sure Viper is 46, which is the Energy Research program. Like, you're taking 9 more above a standard course load, and you're taking a lot of engineering classes. You're taking a lot of classes across both. I think there's a lot of lines blurred between the college classes and the business classes you take, or that you're allowed to take. And I would say that it's really just Wharton with like language classes and a couple other requirements, but it's not so different. And that's reflected in the outcomes of students. Generally speaking, students tend to go just straight finance, straight standard finance, you might consider straight consulting, standard consulting. There are some students that use that kind of like international twist, for sure. There are students that do unique things with the Huntsman program. And there are students that, end up doing their international like business, goals or something a little bit more international. This happens, of course, with every program. But I would say that like the vibe of generally what happens is students just go straight down the Wharton track, fly down it, and then end up as like standard Wharton students. Which brings me to what I wanted to talk about. Of course, let me backtrack for a second here. There are resources that Huntsman, helps with in that vein. It has a lot of, you have the alumni network. It does help. And you have that second degree. It looks impressive when you're applying to positions. But finance recruiting happens your sophomore fall or like spring-ish. So you're really like you haven't taken that many classes by the time you're finance recruiting, but like it looks, fairly impressive when you're applying to finance programs. That being said, There are students that love the international aspect and want to go work abroad and that do work abroad after the Huntsman program. This happens as well. So, it's not a straight finance program or like something like that. It's not like pure Wharton. There is a twist to it, but I would say that this is fairly common. Which brings me to my next point, which is, if you want to backdoor into Wharton and you want to effectively get into Wharton easier, which is something that's a popular topic of discussion, Huntsman is a way to do it. If you have a language behind you that's unique, that you're interested in, or that you took in high school, or that you're near like proficient in, or that you're fairly proficient in, maybe your parents taught it to you, you're a heritage speaker but you're not great, but you want to learn that better, and you have a great story behind that, Huntsman is a great way to just boost your application. Applying to Huntsman doesn't hurt your chances to single degree Wharton. If you choose that as your like second choice, you can choose either the college or Wharton as your second choice. But what it does do is it allows you to tell your story in a different way, and maybe the Huntsman application readers will like your application in a way that the standard Wharton people won't. Maybe you can compete better on a language front with other students than you can on like a pure like business front. And it is a way to backdoor into Wharton. And I'm not sure whether students drop the language after a little bit, but you're generally allowed to with the dual degrees at Penn. You can generally drop the dual degree for one or the other. That being said, it's not that big of a deal like in terms of requirements. It's not like a lot of extra requirements in Huntsman, so I don't know people that have done that. But you can pretty easily. Not pretty easily, but you can backdoor into Wharton this way. There are a number of students that get into Huntsman, and if you have a language background, it might allow you, at the very least, it'll boost your application. It doesn't harm your application. Your application, if you get rejected, goes straight into the normal ED or RD pool. But like you can have an extra boost. But if you have a great like language or like language story that you want to tell, then you can get a super boost, if you will. You can get even higher chance of getting in when you wouldn't have been able to be as competitive otherwise. And before we talk about what Huntsman's looking for in an application, what to write in the essays, etc., I want to take a second to talk about the community and the vibe of Huntsman. So as I mentioned earlier, Huntsman kids are definitely on the Wharton side, both career-wise, but I would also say vibe-wise. Huntsman kids, I feel, tend to hang out more with either other Huntsman kids, but really just Wharton in general. Huntsman is a program of only 50 students at the end of the day. I mean, the numbers fluctuate a bit in every dual degree, but 50 students at the end of the day. And yes, they're friends with each other, but they're really like, I don't know, Wharton-pilled is the best way to put it. And I think that they're more in the business classes, and I mean, they take other classes, but they hang out with like, I don't know, business year students because that tends to be either the career track, tends to be their interests, etc. I don't see as many Huntsman people, for example, in the Japanese Student Association. Even though there are a number of Huntsman people doing Japanese, I don't see them like routinely at the JSA. Not that I attend like routinely, but I meet mostly like Japanese people there, for example. So I wouldn't say that they're necessarily like so active on that side, on the College of Arts and Science side, or on the like language side. I mean, of course, they are active frequently on those sides as well, but the bigger, I think, general trend is the Wharton side. On the community side, Huntsman kids tend to be together their first year in K-Check, specifically in English House, which is pretty nice house, honestly, pretty nice dorm. They all get guaranteed housing there on like a couple of floors. Pretty nice. They live there. They get to know each other. Like I said, 50 students. Huntsman kids do tend to hang out with each other, but I wouldn't say that they only hang out with each other or anything by any means. Like, because they're just in proximity, they get to know each other. And in the same program and in the same language classes, especially if you're in a similar language as someone, you get to know your upperclassmen and such. But I wouldn't say that they like only hang out with each other or something like that. It's a small program. There are tons of kids, especially in Wharton, and I would say, like I said, the college, they hang out with them, but like especially in Wharton, there are a lot of kids and a lot of people to hang out with, like 500 kids a year, 2K Wharton kids total undergrad. So I think that the Huntsman kids tend to branch out of just not just Huntsman. Everyone at Penn tends to branch out of their dual degrees and make friends in one of the two schools that they're in, or both. But I would say people tend to lean towards one. Huntsman kids have a reputation as well. Actually, before that, Huntsman kids have a building also, which is really nice, right across from Huntsman Hall. Huntsman Hall has nothing to do with Huntsman. I mean, aside from the fact that the benefactor is the same, the donor is the same. But Huntsman Hall is the Wharton building on campus, the big, huge building, really nice round building, built, I believe, 20 years ago, a little bit more than 20 years ago now. Very expensive building. All Wharton classes, not all, but a lot of Wharton classes take place there. And then the building right across from Huntsman Hall is the Huntsman Program building. So only Huntsman students can enter. It's a nice building, pretty nice. They have a piano in there. If that's something you're interested in, you could maybe write in your application, show that you're studied on Huntsman. And it's for people to gather, to chill, to talk. It's a nice building. It's a nice perk of the Huntsman building. Very, very nice location on campus, next to the dining hall commons, which I would say that like upperclassmen really eat at frequently. All upperclassmen pass by the Huntsman building to go to their classes practically. It's like right past the bridge that enters campus from the west side. And it's just like a really nice perk. I would say a few dual degree programs have buildings. M&T and Huntsman do. LSM actually does not have like a full building. They have like a room. But anyway, M&T and Huntsman are bigger, more students, so it makes sense that they get their buildings, 50 students each. And then in addition to that, you have kind of like just the vibe. And aside from those community aspects, there are the things that the community does. There's like games and stuff like that. And there's program specific things that happen that just like any program you would imagine. But I would say that like on the vibe check side, like, what do people think of Huntsman students on campus? I mean, they're Wharton kids. At the end of the day, they have the Wharton kind of reputation, snaky, whatever. This is a joke, by the way. I don't think all Wharton kids are snaky, but it's just the reputation. I would say that Huntsmans have a reputation for being more social, being more on the frat side, being more like on the party side. You can imagine that given that they're like doing a language, there's some sort of perception that they're like able to communicate better. I don't know if that's why this, developed, but already business students are like thought to be social and communicative and networking. Huntsman students are like, have this language aspect, have this communicative aspect to their program. So I think that that's where the reputation came from. I wouldn't say that they're like so much more than like, I wouldn't say they're so different from normal Wharton students, but I would say they kind of have like, that more social vibe to them. Whereas other dual degrees at Penn that do dual degrees with Wharton don't have that same social vibe necessarily to the same degree. Also, they have just fewer classes, which is something I mentioned earlier, more time to go out and do things and, party. Frankly speaking, again, other dual degrees, other people do it, but like Wharton kids have a reputation for not doing work as like business degrees easy. And Huntsman kids share that reputation, but among the dual degrees. So there's a lot of dual degree students at Wharton. You have LSM, you have M&T, you have Huntsman, you have healthcare management, and you have a lot of uncoordinated dual degrees. So this is the vibe, if you will, of Huntsman. But moving on to kind of the high school aspect, but moving on to the kind of application with regard to high school work, the first question that comes up is always about grades. And I think, for Huntsman, you're really looking at standard Ivy grades. You're looking at 50, 60 plus SAT, 3.9 plus GPA, ideally 4.0, as many APs as you can take. And I'll talk about the APs in a second. But with regard to GPA, again, 4.0 ideally, but 3.95, whatever, 3.9x is not a problem. Like, it's fine. It's okay to get an A minus, maybe a B or something like here or there. It's not going to tank your application. A couple B's is not the best, but, like a 3.95 is not going to kill you by any means. Like, it's fine. Ideally, SAT 1550, 1560 plus, but if you're in that middle category of like 1500, people get in from there. People even get in from 1400, high 1400s to be clear. It's not totally necessary, but again, if you are lacking in a grade like area a little bit and you're not the strongest and the top, 30 percentile of the Ivy, then you want to be making it up in other areas with your ECs, with your story, etc. So it's possible to get in with all these permutations, and I can't say for sure, but you're asking me what's best. I think that the 1550 plus is best, and it's definitely possible to get in with a 3.9x. 3.8, you're getting into a little bit of a range of, depends on how difficult your school is and a few other things, but still doable. With regard to APs, as many as you can take, ideally. Obviously, that's, easier said than done. But with regard to, what APs are the most important, I would say Calc BC is super important. Wharton cares about it a lot in particular, and they like to see that like that analytical skill. Same goes for Physics C, which is the most sought after AP in all the top colleges. They like to see that analytical background, even for a business program, a business language program, showing that you have that technical analytical skill is very valuable to them. And then after that, econ, macro, micro, fives on those, really nice. Wharton doesn't give credit, but they let you waive some classes, the first set of econ class, or classes, technically, depending on, anyway, it doesn't matter. Not going to get into the details here. But they let you waive that first econ, and it's really nice, honestly. And then as many as you can take. and they're not going to hold it against you for not having, not taking APs, and if your school doesn't offer it and you take, if you take the most advanced classes possible. But, compared to someone who's taken a ton of APs, you might be not as competitive or look as competitive. So it's not like they're going to say, this kid didn't take a bunch of APs, we're going to reject him for that reason. But rather, we have this kid that took a bunch of APs versus this one that didn't take. It depends, and it depends on your school and the number of, where you're from, international, like there's a ton of different factors that go into it. But if you don't have APs at your school, college classes are a way to make up for it. Local college, take a few classes, like not for credit, or maybe your high school lets you take them for credit. That can make up for some of the lack of AP coursework. But APs are what let you skip classes at Penn and at most colleges, except Harvard. We don't want to talk about them. So I think that, as many as you can take, ideally, is the answer. And with regard to language, generally speaking, you want to see those language skills come out somewhere. Whether you're a heritage speaker, you took the language for a few years, whether you love anime, whether you love like some aspect of the culture, you want to have that kind of like background of the language, and almost like, you want to have intermediate level, so you want to have taken classes. Subject tests might be considered, although SAT subject tests have been discontinued, but APs, outside coursework, any way you learn. I mean, I learned Japanese self-studying without outside coursework, and I could have, talked about that. You can talk about those experiences. That's something they look for. They generally want to see you intermediate in language. Okay at it. Students get in with a variety. Let me be honest. Like, it's easy to feign language skills when you're not tested, or when you're not like, interviewed on your like language, because people take exams sometimes but are really poor at speaking, for example. They just memorize the grammar. So, they consider all these things. So generally speaking, there is an exception for Spanish, where if you're a native, you can actually go into Portuguese without, like, or near native in Spanish. You can go into Portuguese without having experience in it. But what's more important than those language skills, because honestly, a lot of students can say they're intermediate in a language, especially since you just take it usually in most high schools. Like, more importantly than that is the ambition, the goal that you articulate with Huntsman. And that goal, can vary widely. I met a kid that was like, I'm studying Japanese to like create robot monks, because like Buddhist monks, because not as many people are becoming monks, and like that's what I want to do. Like, I'm just like, okay, like, I want to create monks in like Japan or something. Like, okay, like that's something you could think of as like a unique goal or ambition. And that's what Huntsman's looking for. Using your language in a unique way. Using that language that you learn in a unique business way in particular, not just like, oh, I'm going to use this language to like do something random, but in a unique business way. So you could consider a number of things. You could consider like, I want to use this language to work in this field in international business. I'm interested in, I don't know, being an ambassador or something, or I'm interested like in, well, maybe an ambassador is a little bit too far off, and not super business related, but I want to work in a company where I'm basically relaying between divisions in like Shanghai and America in particular, or I want to create this type of change in Shanghai. For me, for example, I would just give an example. It's probably easier to give like a hard example of a literal application. I studied Japanese in high school, self-studied. I enjoyed it, right? First of all, why did you study Japanese as a language? I was a weeb. Let's be clear. My opening line to my comment app was "What's up, weeb?" But personally, as I grew through the language, I realized that a lot of Japanese people don't know much about Islam, and I'm Muslim, and I really thought it would be useful to have someone that kind of speaks Arabic and has this like background in Muslim, understanding and like literature and scholarship, and like Muslim like just general like scholarship, and I really want to go to work in Japan and kind of help bring Islam to Japan and make it more well known, and work on this nonprofit that spreads Islam through Japan. You could consider something like that. I want to, like, Japanese are often, they don't know about Islam, and it's not an issue of like, they just haven't heard of it. Like, they just haven't heard of it, and they have a bad perception in the media of Islam frequently because there are not a lot of Muslims around. I want to be that person that has that background in Islam, but also has that background in business to go create this nonprofit, to go create like an organization that, effectively spreads it and teaches Japanese people and helps, or you could say like, I want to help the Muslims in Japan or something like that. There are a lot of Muslims in Japan, that there's 250,000 or so, over 250,000, and it's a very growing population, fastest growing religion in Japan as of 2019. I want to go and help them establish their programs because they don't have people to translate their stuff for them, or they don't have people that can liaison for them between like Muslim countries, or between like they don't have a liaison, or like they don't have people that speak English and Japanese and Arabic to have a good understanding of Islam, to understand and communicate with the people in Japan, but to be able to bring some of the U.S. scholarship, or bring some of the U.S. Like businesses or like companies that are working in the U.S. to try and help in Japan with Islamic knowledge or something like that. Maybe that was a bit of a long-winded example, but you could consider an application like that. And there are a million things you could do. Languages are very diverse. People have varied interests, but generally talking about your interest in that language and what you want to do in the future, what business impact you want to have in the future with it is the best way to get in. And I want to talk a little bit about the application here. So the Huntsman Program supports the development of globally minded scholars who become engaged citizens, creative innovators, and ethical leaders in public, private, and nonprofit sectors in the U.S. and internationally. What draws you to the dual degree program in business and international studies, and how would you use what you learn to contribute to a global issue where business and international affairs intersect? Right? So again, you want to hit both those aspects. So saying I want to go spread Islam in Japan is not enough. For example, you want to hit that nonprofit aspect. And of course, if I'm writing the application, I would be more specific with exactly how I want to do that, what businesses are at play, why it's a business problem or a nonprofit problem, and why it's something that an individual can't do. And particularly with Islamic knowledge, it needs to be verified. And you want to have a company verifying it. Or you could say, I want to bring like halal food to Japan. There's not enough halal food, and we need certification. It's a certification problem. Like that's a unique way you could frame an application. You could say, a number of different things, but generally speaking, you want to talk about, your interest in that language, and then your interest in what you want to do with it in the nonprofit / business / like innovative, like, / public, private, whatever sector you're interested in. And, you can work, and you could be interested in policy. You could be interested in, U.S. like Russia relations or something like that. Just make sure you hit that business tilt to it. Make sure that you have a point, that it's not just I want to become an ambassador that like goes and like translates. I don't want to become an interpreter. Like that's not the goal of the program, right? You want to become someone that does business with the program, someone that goes and like does something business related with that extra knowledge. So I think I've harped on the point enough, but you guys get the idea, right? Having that business tilt to it. It's not enough to just say I want to study a language, or I want to liaison between people, but rather I want to liaison between businesses and create this unique impact. And that's the last thing I want to talk about, the impact. How would you use that to contribute to a global issue where these things intersect? You really want to talk about that impact portion, that portion where you're going to affect change in the world, that portion where it's not just about me working at, Fox News and being able to like, I'm working in a business, I'm working with one division and another, although that could be, a part of your plan. But how is that going to impact the world? If I do this, I'm going to bring this unique cultural diffusion, or I'm going to bring this unique cultural background. I'm going to do something unique. And that's really what you might consider. And of course, you can bring in your experiences with language before and how that let you do something unique. And how that let you do something unique in the past, and how you're planning to do that in the future. So with me, I did a nonprofit in high school called Healing Helpers, where I translated for refugees. And refugees weren't able to get the aid that they needed because they didn't speak the language of the country that they were in. They weren't able to fill out documents properly. So I helped with that. I helped them fill out census information, so that they could be better counted. I helped them fill out, get food, fill out, I translated forms into Arabic back in high school. And I brought other people to help with other languages, and I wanted to make that business impact on refugees, and I want to expand that to this country that has a lot of Muslim refugees. Say I wanted to target Arabic, or I want to expand that to the UK, who has a lot of Muslim refugees, and this is a business problem. I need a nonprofit organization, and that's a global issue, the refugee crisis that you're fixing. Or in my prior example, Japan doesn't have Muslim education, although this one might be depends on how you frame it. Could be a slightly weaker global issue, but if you frame it well, I think it could do well. Or you could say Japan doesn't have halal food. Like I said, that's another specific global issue that affects 250,000 people that only takes one person to solve if you have one person that's solving it well. and I want to be that one person. And you could consider a number of things. You could have general goals, different goals. It doesn't have to be so specific, but generally, I want to fix this issue. Maybe I don't have a perfect idea of how, but I have a general plan and a process. And you can consider extracurriculars like the one I mentioned, like my nonprofit, as being a strong EC in high school. You could consider something like business ECs, a little bit more business ECs. But I think that having experience in high school where you like study abroad, or where you have a unique experience with a language, or unique experience with business and the language, are the strongest, typically speaking. So something like my nonprofit where I was using business and language, right? Or something like working for a company in Colombia. Love Spanish, want to work for a company in Colombia. I tried out interning for them remotely, found great use in it. Something like that could be a strong EC. You can have more business related ECs that don't necessarily have language, like tilt, and then incorporate your culture as the reason you want to have a language tilt in your business education. But I think the strongest way to write it is incorporating both those things. And of course, talk about some of the benefits of Huntsman. You need to answer what draws you to a dual degree program in business international studies in particular. So talking about some of those interests, and how Huntsman will allow you to do that. Having like-minded individuals around you tends to be a common one for all dual degree programs across Penn that people mention. But you can consider a number of things. Having staff to help you guide through, uncertain and difficult areas, like when you're in a country where you don't speak the language super well, or you're not native, or like even how do I get to nativity in a language, things like that. You could talk about these things in your application, and these are all wonderful things to talk about. That said, if you have any further questions, I offer advising at mustafadoesstuff@gmail.com if you're interested in applying to Huntsman or any other top colleges. And we can, shoot me an email, we can discuss, and I appreciate you watching the video. Thank you very much.